You're an adventurer. You followed up on a want ad for a frontier garrison that's short on hands. They need Sellswords to fill out their ranks, and you fit the bill. You could also use the cash, so it was really a no-brainer to sign up. You make the trek out, and as your cart rounds the bends of a still-frozen lake, you taste on the air the last vestiges of winter as well as the familiar sweetness of opportunity. As you lay in bed at the local tavern in the frontier town that night, all you can think of is what the garrison might have in store for you, how deadly it might be, what exactly your job is, and who you might be working with. However, since the job offer was pretty vague, there's only really one way to find out. Hello everyone, Zerk here, and welcome to the first in what I expect to be a long series of campaign diaries. I'm stealing this format from one of my favorite D&D YouTubers, Matthew Colville, though I'm sure he probably doesn't mind. I've been DMing D&D 5e for about 5 or 6 years now, and I've made many of my best friends in life in and through D&D. So I decided to gather several of my best friends together. After we played in a bunch of high-level campaigns, we needed a low-level break, and I started one up very recently. And I promised them I'd do campaign diaries instead of just a normal recap at the beginning of every session. The campaign that I started takes place in Fornost, a snowy kingdom where it's winter more often than it's not. It is largely ruled by a centralized church as well as its king, an ancient gold dragon. Indeed, the magic of dragons is so powerful in Fornost that many dragonborn are born to human parents out of the blue, and that's exactly what happened to one of my players. Mark, one of my good friends, is playing a silver dragonborn warlock sorcerer mix, using both the divine soul and the celestial to play essentially our not cleric. His character is returning to Fort Cardona, the town where the game takes place, to visit their parents as well as follow up on the Sellsword ad that the garrison posted. I sent this to my players along with a 2-page document detailing some details about the setting as well as where every race in the player's handbook manages to fit. Anyways, Mark's character made up the first person to arrive at the coach to Fort Cardona. He was followed up very shortly by my friend Pen's character, a dwarven barbarian by the name of Kinvad Stoneborn. Kinvad hails from the far reaches of the dwarven kingdom of Kilvar, which was recently destroyed about a century ago, tells you how recent it was, by fire giants, and he's looking for a bunch of cash as well as other wayward dwarves to formulate a raiding party and hopefully go and reclaim it someday, but until then, he's basically stuck doing odd jobs. The next character is another Dragonborn, this time played by my friend Owen. He's playing a rogue arcane archer mix, if I think, and by the way, we're starting at level 3, so that's why we have a bunch of crazy multi-classes. I run for quite a few munchkins, as it were. Anyways, Crowvain is a bit of a superstitious type, and his backstory involves how he was once an ordained knight, but his superstition essentially cost him his job when he decided not to protect a very high-profile target and they ended up dead. He ended up serving several years in what amounts to a prison militia, and only recently got off and is looking for cash to get back on his feet, which brings him to Fort Cardona. Our last player is a character by the name of Hector Delmeyer, played by my friend Jared. Hector is a foreign paladin and knight-errant, looking essentially for odd jobs and work as an excuse to find a lost family heirloom that is somewhere in Fornost. He unfortunately couldn't make the first session, so we justified it as his character oversleeping and missing the coach to get to Fort Cardona. Anyways, all my players converged at this coach, which was pulled by 2 oxen, since horses are very rare in Fornost. As far north as it is, they aren't wild, and they're very expensive commodities, only really able to be afforded by the rich, or knights if they're allotted horses. They get on the cart, and they are also joined by an outrider knight, essentially the standing military of Fornost. And the outrider knight has a very curious box in his possession. It's quite wide and looks like it accommodates a small dog, and every few hours or so it will jerk and make growling noises, and the players deduce fairly quickly that there's some sort of live animal in here. This sort of became the point of mystery for the first bit of the session, and on the first night they stopped to camp, Owen's character, Crowvane, decided to go towards the tent where this Outrider Knight was staying, and he watched him open the box and begin to play with whatever animal he took out of the box. He could hear it. But quickly he was noticed after failing a stealth check and decided to cut back into the woods. It was at this point Owen's character saw something he never thought he'd see again. See, in Owen's backstory, he decided that he would be a character who worked out a lot on the frontiers already. And one of the things that he encountered was this cryptid or spirit or person or something called the Bone Butcher. And basically the urban legend of this thing is that you see it the night before a kill is made, and when it eventually arises, it's the reason that you see headless bodies sometimes strung up at the top of trees after snowstorms. All very spooky, kind of Witcher-esque style stuff. And anyways, his character, as part of his backstory, he had seen the Bone Butcher when he was much younger. And when he saw this figure that my friend Liam, who was listening in on the session, drew for us, and did an amazing job of, by the way, he knew shit was about to get real. What I was trying to accomplish with this whole animal in the box subplot leading into Crowvane seeing the Bone Butcher was I wanted to give my players kind of a mystery to bait them in that was kind of simple and pretty mundane before adding a very supernatural mystery on the other end. And by having Crowvane snoop on the Outrider Knight with the creature in the box, it kind of was able to, for me to bridge the two. And I think it was a really cool moment because not only was everyone on edge, Owen was super engaged in the moment, and it was really the moment for his character to shine in the session. And I always try to give each player some moments to shine, so we'll get to everyone else's in a moment. The next morning comes, and the camp is basically taken down. Owen informs the other party members about what he saw, and this is basically the first time he's spoken to Yana, Mark's character. Now, the thing about Mark's character and Owen's character is in Fornoost, and they built this into their backstory, which I'm really impressed by. In order to become a fully fledged member of the Knights or the clergy, you have to spend 3 years abroad in what is basically a mandatory military service. And you're partnered up with someone about your same age. And this is exactly what happened to Mark's character and Owen's character. So they basically already had history with each other, something that Penn wanted to kind of rectify since he didn't really have history with everyone else in the party, and I think he's since changed his backstory so that he was arrested by Owen and Jared's character for disorderly conduct at some point, so everything now sort of connects. And that's one of the things that was really, really good about the session was the interplay between the party, I noticed. Because everybody had largely connected backstories and were so aware of the setting because I had talked about it so much and my players really dug the handout and had a bunch of questions and stuff like that, there was a huge amount of player engagement that I was really proud of. And I think as a DM, the best feeling of player engagement you can have is when your players really engage with the setting and they make characters who really, really make sense for what they're doing, and I cannot be happier with the party that my buddies have produced. So a really, really good job to them on that. And I think really you should always give credit to your players when they kind of take some of the reins of DM like that, because I did not ask my players to create this crazy interconnected history between the 4 of them that has now led them to working as essentially hired blades in this small frontier town, but they all did it themselves, and I think it's going to produce a really cool party dynamic going forward. Anyways, as the next morning comes, the party moves out towards the Fort Cordona, and basically they are stopped when the caravan driver has the oxen spook that are pulling the cart. He comes around and peels over to the Outrider Knight, and he basically says, since the Outrider Knight is really the only person of actual authority here, he says to the Outrider Knight with the box, "Come look at this." Owen then goes to join him as he's pretty concerned that something related to the Bone Butcher has happened, and his hunch was proven correct when standing in the road, they look up to this birch tree that is kind of arched over everything, and hanging from it is the bloody, headless corpse of another Outrider Knight. Eventually they search the area and they don't really find any signs of a scuffle or anything, indicating that the body was probably moved from where it was killed. though they do find the broken halberd that the Outrider Knight was wielding. I had left Kinvad and Diana alone with that box that the Outrider Knight was going. And this is at the point where the box mystery kind of ended and the Bone Butcher mystery kind of really started to take the first bit of the spotlight, was because this body is now hanging, and that gives Penn and Mark's character a chance to look in the box. And what they find in the box is a owlbear cub, which they later learn from the Outrider Knight once they confront him about it, that he had, along with another squadron of knights, liberated several similar cubs from a black market trader, and he was bringing it to Fort Cordona, where he's normally stationed, so that he could release it back into the wild. And my players thought that was pretty sweet, so that was one mystery solved. And anyways, with the corpse in full view and it's starting to snow, the players basically decide it's time to haul ass. So they get back into the cart and they order the coachmaster to basically run the ox at double speed so that they can make it to another fort that's a bit off the beaten path by nightfall. Fort Vulgus, which is the other fort, is uninhabited. The only residents are the Castellan and his family. And after arguing with the Castellan late at night for a while, they're eventually let in and they're able to stay in the other fort, thankfully away from the Bone Butcher. The next day passes by pretty uneventfully. Another bout of great role-playing between my players kind of helps along with the traveling. Since my players are really good at improv, I find that I can just often let them spin their wheels and talk in character while I get ready for the next location. They eventually, of course, finally arrived in Fort Cordona, which I gave them this map. But since it was nightfall when they arrived, they went straight to the tavern. Now, the barkeep at the tavern is a bit of a sketchy dude, not really the stereotypical portly, bald, shining a mug as you see him walking in barkeep. More so like a very tall, slender dude. I drew a picture of him. I'm not as good an artist as my friend Liam is, but I decided to draw all the character portraits for all of the NPCs. Anyways, they talk to Egon, the barkeep, for a while, and they basically find out he either wants them to order something off of the menu that I handed my players, or basically get the hell out of his restaurant. So they end up ordering something, and they get to know their server pretty well. Their server's name is Anya, and she's kind of a bit of a ball of sunshine, who the players end up hitting it off pretty well with. Anyways, from Anya, they learn of a really weird and disturbing rumor, which is that over the last 3 months, the bar that they're at, the Diamond's Den Inn and Tavern, has actually lost 3 servers in 3 months. Odd. The first one skipped town, another disappeared during a snowstorm doing a delivery, and the third one supposedly committed suicide, though nobody ever saw the body, aside from Egon, who says he buried it in a shallow grave out back. Anyways, they learn this of Anya and eventually go their ways into their rooms, heading towards the garrison the next morning. Anyways, the players go to the garrison next morning, and they witness a short argument between a man dressed in a very conspicuous outfit that is clearly not conducive to the weather, and a veteran Outrider Knight. Basically, they're arguing as to whether or not something in the cellar should be dealt with, and the man dressed in the flamboyant outfit basically says you can F off unless you're paying me much better than you already are. So after seeing this, the players are curious, and they eventually approach the veteran Outrider Knight. His name is Corvin. I drew a picture of him here. Though he looks a bit like Pedro Pascal, I actually based him off of Bronn from Game of Thrones. And here's where I think I kind of flubbed the role-playing a little, because although my players really enjoyed Corvin, I don't think I got the mannerisms quite right, so hopefully when I run the next session I can do a little bit of a better job with him. But anyways, they meet Corvin and hear about the garrison commander Rhea, and she's supposedly away doing something in the gated city at the moment and won't return for a few days. And basically, I did this because the garrison commander is a character that the players will meet next session, and she's very different to Corvin, and I wanted to kind of contrast them. So by having the players meet Corvin first, who's kind of this abrasive Bronn-type figure, they would kind of get a bit of a breath of fresh air when they eventually meet Rhea, who I won't really spoil because my players are actually watching this campaign diary, as it were. And anyway, so they talk to Corvin, and they basically find out that there are these creatures called oofs that kind of inhabit houses that aren't blessed properly when people leave them. Basically, if you don't really kind of bless the house, these fey goblinoids will kind of move in after you, and they're basically trickster spirits and generally bad news. The Outrider garrison has one in the cellar of their barracks, which is what him and the man revealed to be a man from the country of Langbarek, which is a neighbor to Fornust, by the name of Romani de Valesca. And basically, Romani is a hedge mage known for taking out oofs, but since the garrison isn't really paying him all that well, and he's kind of got a thing for Rhea and doesn't really have the patience for Corvin, he ended up kind of storming out after Corvin was basically trying to bully him into getting rid of the oof in the cellar. The players, basically, after talking to Corvin, they inform him of what they saw about the Bone Butcher, and Corvin's pretty messed up about it. He's seen the Bone Butcher as well, and he knows exactly what it's capable of. So he basically lets the players off the hook when he was actually just going to send them straight into the cellar to deal with the oof, knowing that the players would kind of have their hands full, not knowing what they were getting into. But since the players were pretty forthcoming with him, he decided to let him off easy. And after this, the players kind of got their chance to open up. They had received their first job from Corvin, which was to clear out a farm of oofs after clearing out the cellar, which they decided to take a day to kind of explore town and prepare for before they set off to this kind of abandoned farm that is now overrun with oofs. Now, I keep using the word oof, and as funny as that might be to you, an oof is an actual creature. It's kind of like an archaic term for elf or goblin from Central Europe. I want to say like where Germany is now is where the word comes from, but don't quote me on that. Magic the Gathering has several oofs in it, and I kind of stole them, mostly because I wanted to kind of switch things up, because normally you're fighting goblins or kobolds or orcs at low levels, so I wanted something different, kind of more fey, and kind of, again, more mysterious, more cryptid-like, since this campaign does borrow from stuff like The Witcher and other cryptid stories and mysteries and stuff like that. So anyways, the players eventually decided to go around town, and at this point the session was kind of winding down and everyone was kind of happy with how things are going. I had done kind of a bunch of plot hooks at this point, basically having Yana, Mark's character, go and meet her parents and then talk about kind of what's going on with them. Penn's character found the local blacksmith and found that the local blacksmith had a dwarven shield of very immaculate make that he recognized as the same type of shield wielded by the company that his mother was part of. So he went to go find the dwarf who had sold the shield to the blacksmith, and they eventually had a conversation, and he was able to kind of convince her to help him out when he decides to go assail Kilvar, which I thought was really brilliant role-playing on my friend Penn's part. The last kind of bit I had, and this was another plot hook that will really come up later, was for Crovain, which is Owen's character. And he decided to go to the general store and talk to the general store owner. And they talked a lot about the Bone Butcher. And the general store owner, who is a retired Outrider Knight, he retired because he had a frostbite injury and he lost his hand in the process, so he can't exactly fight anymore, so he runs the general store. And he talked about how the Outriders at the garrison were concerned about a Burr hag from Volo's Guide to Monsters, if you're curious as to where it is. And basically, he thinks that the Bone Butcher is somehow connected to that. Whether his assumption is correct or not is yet to be seen, but I really wanted to build up the Bone Butcher mystery for Owen's character, since it's not only a part of his backstory, but it's something all the players really dug when, again, I pulled off the Bone Butcher and, again, Liam's sketch later on. It just really made that moment kind of pop. I think, overall, the session highlight was definitely seeing the Bone Butcher, and I'm excited for the next session, which I should be running sometime after this video goes up. And generally, I think everybody had fun, and I think it was a great start to a campaign. So, with everything kind of found out, plot hooks bitten on, and the town explored slightly, my players decided that was a good point to end the session, getting ready to go on their first adventure, clearing out a farm of fey goblinoids. It was at this point I kind of end the session, and everyone seemed to enjoy it, and I enjoyed running it. So hopefully with next session I can really start to kind of grind my gears and really get things going in terms of getting my NPCs into where I want them, especially Corbin, since I'm kind of not happy with how I portrayed him in the session. Likewise, I also think that the party dynamic is really good, and I think the highlight of last session in total was probably the moment with the Bone Butcher, not only because of Liam's amazing sketch, but also because the whole of the party was on edge. The tension was really palpable in that moment, and you could tell, if you were listening in, that my players were legitimately terrified of whatever this thing was, and I thought I did a really good job on that, and I hope I can keep that level of quality going into the next few sessions. It'll be interesting to see how Jared roleplays and drives with the rest of the cast, since unfortunately, again, he missed the first session. So I'm looking forward to that, since he's got a bit of a connected backstory with both Penn's character now, and he always had with Owen's character, so it's going to be really interesting to see that go on. If you enjoyed this little campaign diary, I hope you did, because, well, I did most of this unscripted, and I think as I do more of these campaign diaries, I'm going to get a lot better at going off the cuff about these things, mostly because I really love the kind of AD&D notion that your memory is only as good as the notes you take, and it's not going to be 100% what actually happened. So this is me as the DM giving my filtered version and experience of how my first session of Sellswords in the Snow, as melodramatic as this name is for the campaign, went. If you want to see more campaign diaries, feel free to subscribe, hit that bell for notifications, or if you enjoy Fire Emblem content, head over to my main channel. Or if you're here from the main channel, hello and welcome. Stay tuned, and my name is Zerk Monster Hunter 4. Be seeing ya.